Welcome in, everybody, to another week of XFL Weekly. It's been a few weeks here. Our schedules are crazy, or we're crazy in January, but now it's February. And we're here to chat some UFL. Oh, crap. I introduced this as XFL Weekly. We are UFL Weekly now. Got to remember that. Either way, welcome to UFL Weekly. We're here to chat basically the dispersal drafts, recap some of that, and a good chunk of the free agency that's been going on now that that's live in the league. But after a few weeks, Zach, how's it going, man?
It's going well. You hit the nail on the head. It's been a busy month of January. I know we recorded, I think, where were we? Maybe in early January, or were we in late December? I mean, it's
Early January.
early January. All right. So yeah, it's been a long time coming trying to get this episode in here, but hopefully things will settle down the next couple weeks. We discussed a little bit. We should have a little more routine schedule, and we can pump out some more episodes coming up. But hey, let's talk about now. I'm excited to discuss these draft results with you and dig into some of the exciting things that happened.
Yeah, I'm excited. We'll kind of basically what we're going to do is we're going to run through the dispersal drafts. There were two of them, and I'll get through the specifics there. And then free agency's been kind of live and running amok since. But real quick, Um, rosters at training camp must be 75 players.
Hmm.
So that takes place February 23rd, towards the end of this month. And then at the start of the season on March 30th, rosters have to be trimmed down to 50. So right now it's just kind of like a whole muck of just collecting players and then trimming
Yeah.
afterwards. Um, Prior to the dispersal draft, every team was able to protect 42 players from their last year rosters. And basically, then we had the first dispersal draft, which allowed teams to select up to 20 players from their division. So XFL teams were picking dispersed XFL players, and
Right.
USFL teams were picking USFL players. And then we had a second dispersal draft a week later, which allowed teams to select from the pool of all players. So
Hmm.
everybody was available, both leagues available. Basically, if they weren't picked already or weren't protected, they were available. And then now free agency is open and ongoing, and it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it was kind of interesting through the draft process too to see who teams valued, who kind of fell through the cracks. Even some of these guys that we saw get signed in free agency were some bigger names, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on in the show. But I really like the way that they set up the dispersal draft too, because I think that the XFL teams had a unique perspective on the XFL players. The USFL players had a unique perspective on their players. So give them an opportunity to go get their guys first, and then everyone's in the pool together. So that it gave more guys an opportunity to kind of find homes, even if they weren't selected in that first round of the draft. If first day, we'll say.
Yep, and you saw a lot of it, especially with that first dispersal draft, because it wasn't, I guess, live tweeted or broadcast anywhere. It just
Hmm.
kind of was taking place. So a lot of tweets and like posts about uh, this guy's selected here, and then it's just like, wow, what's happening? Who's going where? When is this going to be finalized? So that was the first weekend, and then the second draft, they were like, all right, let's live tweet this or live post now,
Yeah.
um, and get this out. And then now it's just been a every day. UFL Communications, UFL PR releases the list of players who have been signed to teams, and so it's like, oh, who is it? Who is it? Who signed? It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we need to remember like this. I know we had the USFL, I know we had the XFL, but there's got to be some sort of kind of feeling out of responsibilities and on the business end of this and figuring out how are we going to make this as public as possible to the fan base to and I think that we need to remember this is only year one of the league and it's going to take some time. There's going to be kind of kinks in the system as we go through this off season, as we go through the regular season, and hopefully it only just continues to perfect itself as we move into the second year, third year, fourth year, hopefully so on and so forth as we move forward. So, it was a little frustrating not to see any results from the initial draft, but you can see that they've already made a fix to that, and we're already moving in the right direction. So good stuff, UFL. UFL. Let's keep it up.
Yeah. let's keep it going, and then let's roll right into it. We're gonna kind of merge the two dispersal drafts and basically just go team by team, just highlighting a few players rather than just list off 2 million names of every player that was picked. We're just gonna kind of go team by team, of kind of key players or some players that we thought were key players that were drafted from each team. And then after the drafts combined, we'll highlight some free agents that have been kind of snatched up in recent weeks.
Yeah, Kyle, before we get into this, I just want to say it's been a little difficult in my mind to try to remember what teams are still existing, what teams are gone, so like when I'm thinking, oh, is so and so like is Teamu available? And then I have to remember, no, the Battlehawks are still around. It's just kind of been a mental process trying to remind myself who's still here, who's gone, who we need to worry about. So
Sounds like
it'll
a mental process to even remember where Teamu played last year.
Oh, duh, he was a defender. Geez, see, oh, I'm all messed
Yeah,
up.
he's a
Oh
guy
man,
who's been all over the place,
holy cow.
which is fun.
Yeah, so like I said, my brain is all jumbled up with this. I think I need to see it happening live in front of me on the TV screen, and then it'll really kind of lock itself in. So, yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get started with the Renegades.
Yes, let's get into it. Some guys that the Renegades drafted. Quarterback Lindsey Scott, previously of the Houston Roughnecks. Running back Morgan Ellison of the Seattle Sea Dragons, kind of was part of that 1-2 tandem up there. Wide receiver Deontay Burnett of the Roughnecks, and linebacker Vic Beasley, previously of the Vipers. Interesting names there.
Yeah, dude, I love Morgan Ellison. He was one of my
Yeah.
favorite players last year. He was just electric for the Sea Dragons. I think he's a great addition to this team. And you also can't sleep on Deontay Burnett. The Roughnecks had a pretty good
Yeah.
receiving game last year, and this only adds to it, adds a touchdown threat, and who knows? I mean, that's right there. Those are two really key pieces that could just bolster this offense even more.
Yeah, and something to note on Lindsey Scott, and you'll see this kind of as a common theme coming down here. He didn't play last year for the XFL for the Roughnecks. He was actually drafted by the Roughnecks in the rookie draft back in June. So there's a few of those where they were on a team, but they were more their rights were part of on a team. So now they just kind of like basically drafted rights to the players. Where like Lindsey Scott didn't play for the Roughnecks, but he was on the Roughnecks.
Yeah, it's the whole thing's a little confusing, but it's all good.
Yeah. Moving on to the defenders, DeAndre Francois, currently the starting quarterback for the defenders. He had a interesting couple games last year for Orlando. Edge Trent Harris, previously of the Roughnecks. Something I saw that was common with the defenders in their drafting was a lot of defensive players. So like Trent Harris led the XFL in sacks last year, and then they drafted Tim Ward, 7th in the league in sacks, and then Deontay Anderson from the Vipers, who was the All XFL safety last year. So really bolstering this defense. There wasn't a huge chunk of offensive weapons drafted on this defenders team, probably because they really were proud of their offensive weapons last year, if they're sticking around. But kind of really honing in on this defense.
Yeah, they at this point they have their identity, and I think they're kind of sticking to it. I know we saw late in the season last year, we saw Chris Blair and Lucky Jackson really come on in the pass game, but this feels like a strong defensive team that likes to run the ball and kind of just enforce their will on you. And obviously, their draft showed that here. I mean, couple more defensive players to add to the mix. I like it. I think they're doing what they do best.
Yeah, and then the most interesting draft to me was the San Antonio Brahmas. Of the, I think, 20-ish, little more than 20 players that they drafted, maybe close to 30. 18 of them were Roughnecks. And I think that kind of is attributed to Wade Phillips having coached the Roughnecks, having constructed that roster, now becoming the Brahmas head coach and saying like, oh, bring those guys back down here. So he's drafting the guys that he kind of chose to bring in for the XFL last year. and kind of bringing them back down into San Antonio with him. Or I guess up. Houston's technically, I think they're equal. But running back Jalen Samuels, he was actually signed with the Roughnecks back in December. Tight end Cody Latimer, I thought this was sick. All XFL tight end last year, fourth most receiving yards last year, and then linebacker Devontae Beckett, also the Roughnecks, led that team in tackles, so kind of got his leading tackler back.
Yeah, this was a team, I think, focusing on Cody Latimer specifically, this was a team that really kind of did not throw the ball well last year. I mean, their top receiver ranked all the way down at 25th in the XFL in terms of yardage, and that was Jocks Patrick. So they needed to add stuff to this offense to make it more explosive. And I mean, we saw early on before they had some quarterback issues, the Roughnecks were absolutely explosive on offense. So I think Wade Phillips kind of, again, has a plan of what he's going for, and he's trying to execute it here with picking up these guys. And Jalen Samuels is a great addition too to help achieve that goal. I mean, a little NFL experience never hurts. Never hurts.
Yeah, it's kind of really helpful jumping into the spring leagues with that. Battlehawks drafted 2 wide receivers, 2 Sea Dragons wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 being Jahcour Pearson, the XFL leader in receptions and yards last year, arguably the best receiver in the XFL in 2023. And then they added Blake Jackson, also from the Sea Dragons, to that receiving core. But pairing Jahcour with Hakeem Butler is going to be insane, especially if they can get AJ McCarron back for the season. And then D-back Quinterio Cole, also of the Sea Dragons, led that secondary in 2023 with 48 tackles and 3 interceptions. Kind of adding to both sides of the ball, but I think for the Battlehawks, that big signing was Jahcour.
Yeah, I mean, Jahcour Pearson led the XFL in receiving yards. He had the most targets, most check off every box for him. I mean, I think the only thing he didn't lead in was receiving touchdowns. Now, we need to see where this goes because obviously the Sea Dragons were known for just slinging the ball everywhere with Josh Gordon, with Jahcour Pearson. You know, they got a bunch of guys that even climbed up the list here in terms of receiving leaders as the season went on. So we need to see kind of, do they get AJ McCarron back? Are they have to look elsewhere at the quarterback position? Are they going to throw the ball more because now they have, you know, this insane receiving core? Last year they did focus pretty heavily on the run. They had the 3rd leading rusher in the league last year. So it's kind of yet to be seen. But I mean, putting 2 great receivers together is a perfect way to bring and warm any quarterback into the offense. So it's a good start. And you mentioned Quinterio Cole, fantastic name. First off, not the Colt part, but Quinterio, great name. So we'll see. I like what they're doing. But any last comments on the XFL side here, Kyle?
No, nothing else here.
All right, let's hop into USFL then. We're going to start off with the Birmingham Stallions and their draft. We have 4 guys kind of highlighted here. I'm going to try my best with the name. We're going into uncharted territory here with these USFL guys, but we're going to warm up to them. So the first guy they selected was one of the guys they selected was a defensive end from the New Jersey Generals, Hercules Mataafa. Are we going with that? Mataafa? Something like that? Okay.
Yeah.
But he was tied for 3rd in the USFL in sacks. He had 6 on the season last year. They also took defensive backs Channing Stribling from the Philadelphia Stars, who was an all-USFL player, and Chris Orr from the New Jersey Generals, and Calvin Ashley, an offensive tackle from the New Jersey Generals. So they picked up a couple guys here. Anyone pop out to you, Kyle?
Chris Orr stands out to me primarily because his brother was just signed to be the Ravens defensive coordinator.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
that one stuck out to me. But yeah, I think Stribling is going to be huge. He had a huge season in 22 and had a pretty stellar season last year as well. So
yeah, and again, it's kind of cool to see. Like he led the league in tackles here. I'm sorry, he was 3rd in tackles with 81. Just that's Chris Orr. So it's cool to kind of get to know these guys a little bit and see some of their accomplishments from last year. But Moving on, we're talking about the former Houston Gamblers, now the Houston Roughnecks, but not those Roughnecks. They picked up three guys that we highlighted, two wide receivers, one from the Philadelphia Stars, one from the Pittsburgh Maulers. Shout out Pennsylvania. Cyril Grayson Jr. came from the Philadelphia Stars, who was a former NFL player. And Isaiah Henry came from the Pittsburgh Maulers. And last but not least, a familiar name on the defensive side of the ball, Reuben Foster, who was an NFL first rounder, played for Alabama, kind of bounced around a little bit, and now we see him here in the UFL.
Yeah, he has been bouncing around. I think Foster had a solid year last year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do remember him being in the USFL as well. Yeah.
Yeah, not much. I mean, not much really to add there. That's a big name, and I think that it could pan out for him, or we could be seeing him on the downside, the decrease. So we'll see, but it's worth the shot. I mean, obviously the pedigree is there for him. Okay, moving on to our next team, we have the Memphis Showboats. The Memphis Showboats picked up a quarterback in this expansion draft, Case Cookus, the Philadelphia Stars quarterback, a guy who won a championship in the USFL. Running back Darius Victor, coming from the New Jersey Generals, as well as an offensive tackle, Terry Poole, from the Pittsburgh Maulers. One other guy that they did pick up was Vontae Diggs, a pretty solid outside linebacker coming from the New Orleans Breakers, who has had just a couple monster seasons in the USFL so far.
Yeah, the Showboats on paper had a fantastic draft, particularly with Case Cookus. Probably one of probably the best quarterback in USFL last year and the year before. Just a solid QB, and especially to put him on a team that needed one. I mean, they got a guy that can perform and has performed in spring football, and hopefully will take them to a championship. At least that's what they're banking on.
Yeah, that's the game plan. I mean, you always got a blueprint, but once we got to see it in action for 10 weeks, and hopefully it pans out to be what they're hoping.
Oh yeah.
All right. So last team we're talking about here, our team 8 of 8. We have the Michigan Panthers, our northernmost team here in the league. The Panthers, we focused on offense for their key players here. Also picked up a quarterback. They picked up Davis Cheek, a quarterback from the New Orleans Breakers. They also picked up a running back, Wes Hills, from the New Orleans Breakers. And last but not least, a guy who has already come and gone for the Michigan Panthers, Corey Coleman, wide receiver from the Philadelphia Stars. Obviously, we know the name Corey Coleman from the NFL. We know him from the USFL. He actually led the league in yards and receptions last year, but he's already been waived. So he's out there in the free agency pool. Maybe he just didn't fit in the system or something. But what are your takes?
Yeah, I think the Cheek and Hills picks are kind of big for this, and kind of defines what this offense is going to look like. Especially Hills. I feel like they needed that running back. I mean, Hills had a great season last year, and really just hopefully this Panthers team can kind of continue that, take advantage of that with Hills.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seeing that he led the league in rushing yards that's a good guy to sign. That says something. I mean, you can't really fake that. So, all right. So after recapping all 8 teams here in their drafts, Kyle, let's hop into free agency a little bit. Give me some of your key points on free agency here.
Oh, well, I think the biggest team having a huge free agency here, both in number and player signed, are the San Antonio Brahmas. Right off the bat, day one of free agency, they signed 20 players, which I think the next team had like 8 maybe. But they just consumed anybody available. I think it was like another chunk of Roughnecks players. But if you look at the list of not only the list of players signed in free agency, but like just players on rosters currently, the Brahmas are pages. And again, this has to be trimmed down to 75 at the start of training camp and down to 50. And they signed 20 players just in free agency on top of the 20 that they drafted. And this is just day one of free agency. They've still been signing. However, I think they have two of the biggest signings here
Absolutely.
of free agency. I could be argued against that. Feel free to. But John Shea Kirkland,
Mm-hmm.
my love from the start of the XFL season last year. Man, I'm hoping he's healthy and can have a huge year. But reunites with Wade Phillips. And huge, probably the biggest signing of the entire UFL. Destroying is joining the UFL on his path to hopefully make it to the NFL after he basically, not that he was forced to, he made the decision, but to quit college football for his kind of focus on YouTubing. And I mean, makes his way into the UFL and has a shot and is really hoping to kind of take advantage of that, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool to see him get a shot here, and I also think it is a smart publicity move for the UFL as well.
For sure.
There are kids that watch his videos up and down that are going to probably tune into the games to watch him kick. So it's a fantastic move for them publicity wise and kind of from the PR standpoint. But Kyle, you kind of led me astray there. I thought you said two big signings. You gave me John Trey Kirkland, and I kind of assumed it was destroying. But I think you shorted my guy Tom Flacco, brother
You're right.
of legendary quarterback Joe Flacco. He also signed with the Brahmas. The Brahmas have gone on a quarterback spending spree. Well, I guess signing spree. They really haven't spent anything. Tom Flacco, Quentin Dormady, formerly of the XFL.
Dormady had a good season last year.
He had a very good season. Yeah, we kind of were a little weird with him at the beginning, but he really turned it on and had a nice end to his season. And Chase Garvers also. So, I mean, they've brought in three guys who I'm assuming one, maybe two of them will get cut, and they'll be left with their guy at the end there. So, really kind of interesting to see what they're what they're doing in free agency.
Yeah, they're just I really think they're just getting as much as they can. They're going to try to put a puzzle together rather than solve one. They're going to make the puzzle and hoping that the pieces that they find fit it. Yeah, I'm hoping that they figure it out. I mean, they're going to somehow. Battlehawks, skipping the Brahmas, just jumping over them. I also forgot to say, Destroying was at a bunch of XFL games last season. So he's kind of been one of those things that have been slowly taking shape, but finally made his way.
He did a little bit of like sideline reporting, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was like one of those guys that before the games they'd show like, oh, Destroying's in attendance. But he has a close relationship with Jacquard Pearson, I think. They kind of have a bunch of videos together themselves. So
it's pretty cool. Yep, very cool.
The Battlehawks, St. Louis Battlehawks, signed Darius Shepard, XFL Special Teams Player of the Year last year. This isn't a huge signing. He was a Battlehawk last year, but it's just kind of like a re-signing. DC Defenders got D-tackle. Zach, you can tackle that name.
Robert Kimdiche. Yeah, Robert Kimdiche.
Perfect.
He was I thought he was going to be the truth. I mean, when we were in high school, he was like the number one overall recruit coming out of college. Everyone wanted this guy, and he went to school, and it was just kind of weird. And he was a first rounder, but he was like 29th overall, I think. And he just never really panned out in the NFL. But I mean, again, the pedigree, first round draft pick. The defensive-minded defenders are going with another defensive player. And on top of that, they actually scooped up another first-round talent in free agency. They picked up DeAndre Baker, who was a corner with the Giants for quite a while. Also a first-rounder. I think that was only in 2019, so he's still pretty young too. So lots of defense for these guys. Who knows? We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and then the only other, I guess, primary note here I have, and I'm sure, again, I put these notes together earlier this week. There's probably been a dozen of other primary signings. So please bear with me if I've missed anybody primary. And actually, let us know. Comment. Let us know who we missed. But the like Birmingham Stallions signed Mark Gilbert, who was the 2023 All USFL D-back, kind of adding to that defensive backfield. That's not what they call it. That secondary.
The secondary. There you go.
But yeah, just another strong guy, a strong signing to a strong team. And we don't have to run through, I guess, make a comment on each of these quarterbacks, but just kind of highlighting the QBs that were signed on top of what was already mentioned. EJ Perry signed with the Panthers. Chase Garber signed with the Brahmas. Nolan Henderson with the Roughnecks. Reed Sinnott with the Roughnecks. Jalen McClendon with the Defenders. Troy Williams with the Showboats. Previously led the Maulers last year to the championship game. Tom Flacco and Quentin Dormady to the Brahmas. So again, that's 3 quarterbacks with the Brahmas. And there's been a bunch of unsignings as well that I unfortunately haven't been 100% on top of. So a lot of these players have signed. There's probably a few that have unsigned. Zach, thoughts?
It's again, this is just right now. We're in this point in time where it's a massive rush to get all these guys signed, and everyone's kind of just scooping up as much as they can. They're going to see what they got, and then we're probably going to see a bunch of cuts getting down to training camp and getting to that 75 number, and then to start the season down to 50. So, I mean, as much as we are seeing guys get signed right now, that's going to get trimmed way, way, way down. So, two other guys I want to throw in. Another exciting punter / kicker that we have to add here, and also for representation's sake, another black punter kicker that we have is Marquette King, signed with the Renegades. He brought some spice to the NFL for a few years and then found his way out. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play some more. And then Wayne Gallman, running back formerly for the 49ers, I think he was with the Falcons for a little bit, the Giants for a little bit, is a Battlehawk. So 2 other guys just to kind of add to that mix of that glob of players that we could see hang around, we could see go. Who knows? But in other news, Kyle, I think we have something exciting that we have to announce. That was a very first in UFL history.
The very first interleague, or I guess outer league trade between the USFL and XFL.
Mm-hmm.
The Birmingham Stallions and the San Antonio Brahmas swapped D-backs. Bubba Bolden went to the Birmingham Stallions while Elijah Holder went to the Brahmas. And I think it's shocked that we are seeing a USFL and XFL trade. I think that is still insane and awesome, and it's just incredible to see.
It's like a full circle moment. Like it's all coming together. It was great. So good on those 2 guys. I feel like they just took 2 identical players and they're like, let's just do this to do that.
I want that guy just a little bit more. I want that guy a little bit more. Here. How about this?
And they said, and we'll be the first to ever do it. Let's just go for it. So very cool to see. It really kind of solidifies this as being a real life league, like a real thing. And it'll be cool. It's going to be really surreal to see the first. I mean, right off the bat, the opening game, but to see that first game of the two league champions taking on each other, and that first interleague matchup as we'll see several different times throughout the season. So it's pretty cool to see this. It's real. It's coming to life, and it's awesome.
It's so awesome. Man, things are happening in this UFL league. It's incredible to see. We've got 2 drafts that have already taken place. We've got free agency currently just happening. And then training camp at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that'll be our next major content point, I would say, is once we start to see those training camp rosters kind of take form and we see who's been cut and who's still left. That'll really kind of start to give us an idea of what these teams look like and what we can expect.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of cuts and instant signings taking place, as a lot of these players are kind of probably still really sought after.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. That'll do it this week for UFL Weekly. Thank you for tuning in. I think next week, Zach and I will discuss, still up in the air, but probably like a what we know so far for the upcoming UFL season. with schedules. Hopefully we get some announcements on schedules by then.
Yeah.
Any rules.
Couple rule changes. Yep.
I think there's a lot of stuff still being finalized, but we'll do like what we know so far. So look forward to that next week as we are in line to kind of get back in a regular rhythm here in
Yes.
recording and getting these out. So thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to, again, like, comment, subscribe. You can find us on socials at UFL Weekly. On Instagram and Twitter, we are UFL_Weekly, but everywhere else, it's UFL Weekly. Find us, follow us, comment, let us know where we went wrong here. Feel free. We're not here to be 100% correct. We try to be, but we know that we're just trying our best to keep everybody in the know. So thank you for tuning in. Zach, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you again.
Always
I'm
is.
looking forward to getting these regular again.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
See ya.